So I wanted to come on here to talk about why I think that we should contact isolated tribes. When I say isolated, I'm talking about the tribes that are 100% isolated, meaning that it is illegal to go within a certain distance of their islands. I put together a list here on this piece of paper of my reasons, and I numbered them not in any particular order. And shall we begin? The number one reason, is we do not know how much these isolated tribes are polluting the waters around them. So we don't know exactly how they deal with their own sewage and waste. And you would think after so many centuries and eons of being on, said island, that eventually, even if they are burying their number two, they're going to run out of spots to bury their number two. So you would probably think, well, they don't have a sewage system, so maybe some of their stuff is going out to the ocean and we have no idea what's going on because we don't even have drone footage of them, which actually was one of my other reasons is, we should probably have at least some sort of drone footage in order to get information, which actually leads me to my next reason, which is environment is shared. Now, we have to think sort of as a species rather than just as a country or as a gender or just whatever it is. We should collectively not only try to help out others who don't have the same access to resources and social life and honestly modern life as we do. We were very privileged to have that kind of thing and not have to be born into that sort of a life, because it is very primitive. And not only is it very primitive, but it's almost like having to live in a forest, because you technically are living in a forest. It's just in a forest on an island, which no one is allowed to come near you. And I know that people are going to talk about how they don't want to be bothered and they kill anyone who tries to visit their island, which is true, yes, but that is because of what they're taught, which is that, they need to fear outsiders and they think that the outsiders are coming to kill them and all this stuff, which again goes back to my point about it being a primitive thing. Now, another thing is that people have this theory, and I put emphasis on the word theory, that if we make contact with an uncontacted tribe, that we will accidentally kill them just because we are exposed to certain viruses and bacteria that they have never gotten used to. And that to me kind of just doesn't make any real sense, because
not to mention the amount of microplastics that are in a lot of fish and in the ocean itself, like massively in the ocean. You don't think that there's some way that these isolated tribes have already come into contact with some sort of bacteria just from the microplastics themselves? Because they're not sanitized.
Not only is it based off of a theory, but it's also just saying, well, we can't help them out, we can't do this, we can't do that. Not to mention, we also don't know if they need help with anything, because think about this. They also don't have a medical system. They don't have any of the modern technology where, if they get sick from something, they don't have any sort of medical team to be able to help them out. And also, what if they get injured? If they get injured, broken bone, whatever, they don't have modern medicine to be able to help them out. So maybe us contacting them is actually going to be something better for them in the long run, because we are helping them and introducing them to technology.
And no one has ever actually specified whether or not we, as a species, have the technology, the medical technology to save them if we do spread something to them.
Not to mention, if this theory happens to be correct, we still have military resources. Most countries, I'm pretty sure a whole lot of countries have, good enough military to be able to go to these islands, make contact, establish it, and be able to walk away scot-free, as well as with information. Even though they will try to throw spears at any outsider that approaches them, what can actually be done is, if you employ military tactics, they have knowledge of this crap. Like, they know how to approach a situation and not get killed, especially when it comes to people that don't have guns. It should be the ultimate easiest thing to accomplish when we're employing the military to do so. Off the top of my head, you have knight armor that can withstand spears. You have, again, drones. You have just the overwhelming force of them. And not only that, but if there really is no way for us to monitor and study them through drones, then at that point, we also do have the option of biohazard suits and all kinds of other techniques that could even be used during, like, let's say, an insane pandemic. I'm not talking about COVID, but, you know, like a really, really scary pandemic where they have to make sure that they're not spreading something. They can employ tactics like that in order to make sure that the tribe that they're interacting with does not get sick from any potential bacteria, virus, or just anything else that we may have. Now, also, I read a factoid a little bit back about how some percentage of our DNA is actually made up of viruses. Now, I'm not sure whether this translates also to isolated tribes, because it does depend on how long they've been isolated for, but this sounds like something that goes back a million years or more plus. That the island itself should be studied and not just the people. The people I most definitely think should be studied, and let me explain why. We already have this theory about, you know, the differences in immunity and all that stuff, but one thing that really piques my interest is the fact that all throughout history, all throughout humanity, actually, is that we used to get puberty at around 17 years old up until about 100 years ago. And then it just got lower and lower and lower and lower ever since. Now, this is not to make any sort of conspiracy theory, but I do suspect that some of it is to do with the mass production of food and how we have to use so many pesticides and so many techniques that can end up fucking with your hormones. And with that being said, you also have the other things such as us seeing light at night when we're biologically not supposed to. So I do think that biologically we were supposed to get puberty at an older age. However, some people do argue that it's just evolution and we are supposed to get puberty, you know, at 10, 11, 12, whatever it is. And to that, I would say the only way to really find out would be if we were to find out what age that people of an isolated tribe or of all isolated tribes get puberty. Because think about it, they're not exposed to light at night that is unnatural. They do not eat food that is mass produced with pesticides and all this other stuff. So there really are benefits for us and benefits for them if we make contact. So a lot of people like to say that if you get killed when you go to an isolated tribe, you were warned, it's a choice, blah, 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 you didn't have to do that. But whenever someone gets killed, when it comes to like gang violence or drugs or something like that, we don't ever really like try to blame the victim that way. And I'm not sure why it's acceptable to blame the victim when it comes to this sort of thing. It's almost like culture is, it's almost like they don't want to offend someone's culture, even though these people don't use social media in the first place. So they don't really know that you're, I guess, offending their culture. So, you know, certain things do have risks. Of course, I'm not talking about the guy that went over there trying to, you know, convert them to religion and stuff like that. None of that is important. What's important is studying them for science, for humanity, and also helping them move forward with modern life. Because we also don't know how many lives we could have saved from those tribes if they had modern medicine. We really don't know what goes on over there on a daily basis because no one is allowed. And I really think that the law should change. I also think that visiting them would ultimately lead to less carnage in the future, which means that once you introduce them to modern life and you let them understand that we are not a danger, at least not the danger that they think we are, then we're going to end up having less carnage because we don't know what goes on over there in the first place. So I'm not just talking about people that could visit them in the future potentially, but also amongst each other. And also potentially if they are polluting the waters. And I also think that it's inhumane to not want to contact these tribes, because don't you think that there could be people over there that are lonely and, you know, that wonder about the outside world, but they're just so indoctrinated that they have to kill anyone that visits, or, you know, they just cannot be a part of the outside world. It's just insane to kind of respect that.
I did also forget to mention incest as another reason of why we should not let them just be completely isolated.
My second to last point is that bacteria can still get to their islands from us regardless if we contact them or not. Now, I did hear this from a friend who was actually roommates with a trans woman, and they both shared a porta potty. And so actually what ended up happening is that my friend ended up having his estrogen levels raised because of him sharing that porta potty with a trans woman. So it is like, just even going into the same environment as pee can still affect you. When you smell something, you're actually breathing in genuine particles that came from whatever substance it is.
Not to mention, when it comes to the environment, ship vessels that fish definitely affect the ocean and the ecosystem around them, and it spans for many, many miles. So I do believe that these tribes already have some sort of immunity.
When you hear people talking about how, oh, well, like, we have fresher air in this area of this massive city, but then over here we actually have a lot more smog and all this stuff, because still, like, things travel in the environment, and it's also not exactly year round either, because there are seasons for certain viruses and bacteria, and viruses also travel faster in the cold. That's another thing. Now, my final point is, I actually would like to reiterate what Matt Walsh said, which is that they are behind and they deserve the chance to catch up in society and in civilization, just in life in general, honestly, in this whole planet. I 100% back that, and I hope that this reaches someone of some kind of power or influence, and one day we can see some kind of change and be able to get the information that we deserve and be able to improve the lives of those who deserve to have their lives improved.